Hey guys,
And
welcome
dudettes.
back to our podcast, Set the Standard, with your host,
Dad.
and Janelle.
Wow, we're back.
Yeah, that took me a second to do
Back
that
for the
intro. I'm so
attack
sorry.
after I took you for a thrashing bike ride today.
I did go for a bike ride.
Unbelievable.
And
I'm glad we finally took the training wheels off. I think it's pretty cool now. You see, so I started about a year ago. I had her down to one training wheel.
Yeah.
And you were kind of doing that wobble thing. And then today we decided we went for it. We took both training wheels off, and you flourished. I was impressed.
I did 10 miles.
Mm-hmm. And never complained once.
I didn't complain.
What? Yeah, you were pretty quiet back there.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
It's okay. Honestly, this is all the truth. I'm not going to deny it. Bike riding is definitely a different muscle. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
But when I take my dad hiking, he's always behind me. So I guess
Well, it's funny. The last time I was out in L.A., we should tell this quick story. So Janelle's a little competitive booger. And I took off. I forget what you had to go to the bathroom, I think, or something.
No, I wanted to mess with you because I knew you. I knew.
I go, well, I'll start going. So I'm trucking up this, what's that called?
Runyon Canyon.
Look it up on, yeah. What is
in
it,
LA.
like a mile and a half, I think, up the hill?
Yep, I think so.
It's about a mile and a half.
Yeah, to just one part, the part that I do.
It's all uphill. I mean, if you're not used to doing that, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so I'm taking off, and Janelle gave me quite a lead. And sure enough, man, I look back a couple times. I don't see her. I look back again. All of a sudden, I see her. Little stinker's running up the hill.
I know. So my dad is pretty competitive.
Not at all.
Because my dad, he went on a hike by himself, I think the day before or a few days before. And he was like, oh, I'm going to do my all-time best because he uses Strava on his Garmin.
That's right.
And there was a gal running or whatever doing the hike. So he's like, oh, he's like, that was my motivation to speed up.
Well, she was she was pacing me. I mean, even though she was faster than me.
Yeah.
And then that's when that's the day I went farther too. I kept going.
Oh,
I
yeah.
turned the corner. We usually turn around and come down.
We do.
Went that extra, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's a cool little hike for good. Well, what is it? 45 minutes by the time you go up and down.
Yeah. So anyways, my dad was like, this girl was motivating me. He's like, I think I got my best time.
Ooh.
So when we started our hike,
Yes.
I went to the restroom. They had restrooms down at the bottom. So he's like, I'm just going to start. So I was like, oh, I'm totally going to get my dad to wanna.
I was trucking.
Yeah. Because today, like, my dad was in front of me the whole time. Honestly, that doesn't motivate me.
Well, I was just trying to lead the way. So
No, you were. But what I'm saying is some people would be like, I have to. And
but you pout, and then you just kind of stay back there and dawdle. You don't even try. I'm like, whatever.
I was
if
trying.
I did that with you on my hike, if I just went,
No, I was trying.
I just go real slow.
I was
You would be
trying.
frustrated too, though.
Dad,
I should just whine more.
I was
When next time I come to LA, it's so hard.
I was trying my best.
Okay.
Speaking
This actually leads right into topic.
Speaking of trying your best, today we're going to talk about
how to master the decades of life.
yes, and really just depending on which decade you are in.
Yeah, no kidding.
You can still apply these throughout. And remember, when I or my dad and I are giving, kind of our tips and tricks. Also, if you haven't fully followed them and you've passed the decade, just know that there's never something you can not fix. Obviously, if you've had health issues from your decisions you've made, let's say. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, you can always kind of make a change and a transition in your life. So don't feel like, oh, I didn't do that in my 20s and now I'm in my 30s. If you've made certain decisions in your 20s when we talk about it and now you're in your 30s and you're reaping those decisions, you can still turn around. So don't think that, the suggestions that we give are things that you can't take because you didn't do them in some decade. Just wanted to throw out that disclaimer because I feel like I just don't want people to feel discouraged because you can always turn things around.
Well, I think as we think about the whole really mission of this podcast was we talk about set the standards. We're setting our standards, yours, ours, theirs, whoever's.
Yeah.
And so how do you do that? You learn from everyone else.
Right.
Right? We're all going to skin our knees and, all kinds of good stuff. So we thought it would be fun. Janelle's has a few decades now under her belt, and I have a few more that we would maybe chance to reflect, but also maybe share.
Everyone should know you have doubled the decades of me.
Oh, hurts.
Your decades are doubled.
Yes.
No. So let's get into some 20s. Let's just get right into it.
As much as I know you want to do that, I'm going to interrupt. Excuse the interruption. I think you do need to talk about from 10 to 20, because you think about what goes on, it sort of starts laying the groundwork for things. So I'm not saying we go back to when you were 10 years old, but I think, that high school thing is a big deal. So I'd say you're really your second decade of life. What would you do as you think back on that and you think about that time to get to your 20s? Because a lot of times, think about it. You've spent 13, 14 years in school, this routine, living at home, all these things. And now, boom, before you reach 20, you're probably, have experienced quite a few different things. So what do you think? No?
Okay, go for it.
Well, what I would say is I think the pattern in my generation was you got out of high school and you went to college, was kind of the pattern and the expectation, I guess, for the most part. Not everybody, but a good portion. So I think that the decade of or my generation, when you're in that, we'll call it 15 to 18, when you're, okay, what are you going to be when you grow up kind of thing starts happening. And when I look back at that, I think that that's a time where I think it's helpful to have someone expose you to options you have more than what maybe your parents are telling you. Because my parents were, well, maybe go to college or just work or, join the military. Not that my folks were pushing me to join the military, but those were kind of the options. Okay. And I just don't know that. I think the discussion that you need to be having with yourself and hopefully with mentors and parents and so forth is, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. So it is pretty critical, because when you're in high school, maybe, ninth grade isn't as big of a deal, but 10th grade, then 11th and 12th is really where you start taking, classes that probably will relate to what you want to do in your life. Would you agree or not?
I just think so differently.
Okay, well, that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. I mean, if you are in high school and you happen to find this podcast, I want, there are changes I would make. Like if I looked back, I would make different decisions for sure.
Yeah.
But I can't. So I would say if you are in that second decade, between the ages of in your high school years and right before you go to college, I didn't start my career until I was 23. I was posting a few videos on YouTube when I was like 21, maybe like one video I think I have, and then I have another one when I was 22. But my career and everything, my life has been based around and shaped around, didn't start until I was 20, almost 24.
Maybe that's a good takeaway from that decade is allow yourself to don't paint yourself in a corner in high school like I'm going to be this. Mm-hmm. And then you find out 5 years later that when you're in your 20s, like, man, I didn't want to do that at all.
And I think what was really key for me is, I never broke my back trying to study and get amazing grades because I genuinely was not passionate about it. And I think if I would have forced myself more to be better, because I could have been better in school. I could have. I mean, you can, as much, if you want to get, I never gave it my all. I can say that I think some maybe projects I did, but it was last minute. So was it really my all? I would say if you're not super passionate about school, and this shouldn't just be like a cop out either. This is something, to me, I wasn't trying to like cop out of not doing school. I was going to school. I don't think I ever skipped school once. If I did, it was because like I skipped first hour and, my mom like let me sleep in or something. But I would say like if you're genuinely not passionate about something you're doing, whether it's a sport or school, let's say you're just like not the best at school and you are giving it a shot. You don't need to like make it your whole day. That sets you up for realizing what you need to be putting energy into so you can make yourself a living and you can figure out what you're going to do moving forward. I think for me, I did not know what I was going to do going into college. I really didn't. And even throughout college, I I got a marketing degree. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll be in sales. Maybe I can get a marketing job. I was working at a makeup counter at Nordstrom. So I was doing a little bit of like the sales typey thing. And then I became a spokesperson, and I traveled around the United States when I was 22. Right when I graduated, I got a job. It's called the Auto Show. They basically show the cars for the next year. It's like a big convention center that you rent out in all the biggest cities in the US. And you dress up all fancy and you present these cars to audiences walking by. You give presentations on a stage. And so when I got that job, I basically traveled the whole United States for that year, became a server. And then I was just like, all of these things of like not being really passionate about school, not being really crazy about sales. So, you know, I would say in your first couple of decades of life, don't put pressure on yourself. If you're around parents that are putting pressure on you, you know, that's a hard one. I didn't really have that. But I did have where my parents were like, okay, well, if you don't really know what you're going to do, you're going to go to a community college until you figure it out. And then from there, like, we can decide your last 2 years. So, you know, if you don't have someone putting pressure on you, don't put pressure on yourself. Even though everyone around you, it feels like they're studying in their AP classes in this college.
You know, a great example, just real quick, is your youngest brother. I took him to several colleges to visit, and it was primarily around engineering. And he went, you know, he's easy going that way. Yeah. And when the time came, he was like, I don't think I want to go to those schools. And he said, well, just do the community college thing. And okay. he went for, I don't even know if it was 2 semesters. And he's like, Dad, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, he did.
So that's when I said, well, you have to do something. So we need to figure that out. And I told him up front, I said, if you want to be a plumber, electrician, or I don't care.
Yeah.
So, you know, he ended up going to a trade school. So I think there are a lot of people who are in their later decades we're going to get to are in careers that if they had to do it all over again, they wouldn't do what they're doing.
Right.
So I can't, the only thing I can give you from looking at it from my standpoint, I fell into a lot of my careers, is just if you have an interest in something, even if it's art or whatever, try to find some people you can talk to. Just see if that would really be all that you think it is. And maybe that would help you. That'd be my advice that I try to do with you guys. I just remember thinking, just get your degree.
Yes,
and
you did always say
I
that.
felt for you, I always thought you'd be in some kind of, sales, marketing, whatever, just because of your personality. And essentially you are. You've been a spokesperson and many other things. So I felt just having that under your belt would be all you needed.
And I think that was some good advice, but I'll also say, I kind of wish I took that money and put it towards like acting and singing and video production, learning production, reading scripts, writing. I'm not a great writer of any sort, really. So I almost think, for me, college was not really necessary. I did learn some sort of discipline, but I feel like the discipline that I learned as the person that I am today didn't come from school. It came from my dad. I would say I'm still very much always late. I'm still very much horrible with time management, but I'm disciplined in the sense where I hold myself to a high standard. I think that came through my dad. So I would say, my dad has been always pro school. I'm really not if you don't need it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So that's cool. So let's move on to our 20s.
Yeah, go for it.
I think there's 3 categories I want us both to touch on for the 20s. It's going to be finances, relationships. I'm going to touch on friends and people you love because your first loves kind of fall in your either late teens and your 20s. So you really feel that. And then the last one is health.
A little spiritual in there too.
Yeah, and spiritual. We'll throw some spiritual stuff in there. So I'll just get started with relationships. That was a huge pivotal one for my 20s. And so was yours. My dad got married in his 20s. Some people get married in their 30s and some people get married in their teens. You got married in your 20s, and then I had a very long-term relationship in my teens, but also a lot through my 20s as well. And I would say, a tip that I could give if you're in your 20s is to be single and celibate. And I know that's hard. Or date one person for as long as you can. And obviously, if it's toxic and, violent, please don't. But and mine was a little toxic, but I was very immature. But if you're in a long-term relation, or you're going in that sort, and people are telling you in your 20s, break up with that person, get out of that, you got to experience all these things. For me, I have friends that have experienced the college life and that whole thing that comes along with it, sleeping with Susie, Joe, all these, or whatever you're into. And I never had that experience. I was in a relationship, and even though it was on and off at times, I still was very much in a relationship. And I feel like that saved me. And here's what I think it saved me from. And then you can go ahead and say your piece on relationships and stuff.
Sure.
I think it saved me. Obviously, I do have trauma from my relationship. I was in a 13-year relationship. No matter what, when a relationship ends, someone's going to be somewhat hurt. Hopefully, maybe if it's mutual, good for you. But it wasn't that way a lot of the times. But it saved me from, I think, just really having my self-worth ripped from me. I think I still dealt with some issues from that. But a lot of people that I know that have really just like dated freely, and maybe I'm speaking just for the ladies, men are a little different. My brother has given me some insight that's different, but the one tip of advice relationship wise I can give you is to be in a committed relationship and try as hard as you can, as long as you're not in a dangerous position, or be single and save yourself for someone that you do really first love, and hopefully that you get married to if you are Christian and you believe in that. It'll save you a lot of self-doubt. It'll save you a lot of low self-worth. I know a lot of people that really had their crazy experiences kind of feel a bit used. I never have felt used by a man ever before. And I think not doing the hookup life, I think saved me from that. I've never felt like, no, maybe I know a couple guys have tried, but no, take me home. So the advice I would give is that, and I would say it's going to save you from using your body for a situation that maybe you won't even remember or you'll regret. Not someone you truly, truly love. And if you're like, well, it's still fun. If you love somebody, that won't even compare. So might as well not rack up the numbers doing it just for the fun moment. You can have a lot of fun in a lot of other ways, trust me. And I think celibacy is such a great, great thing. I think it allows you to think about more of what you really need. Some people are like, if you don't experience all these partners and things and all this stuff, you won't know what you want. That is 100% not true. If you tap into getting to know yourself, you'll know what kind of partner and lover and person you need. Like if you don't like PDA, you'll learn from yourself if someone's like hugging you or whatever. Okay, I don't really like that, but I just met someone that needs that. You don't need to be sleeping around or with several people for fun to recognize what you like need or don't need. And I think that'll save your self-worth. It'll save your self-confidence. It'll save your body count. Not that that should matter, but it will. And it'll save you a lot of just like history. I've noticed when I've talked to other people or when I was going on dates, if they had like a long laundry list of history or people hitting them up, to me, exes, ex-girlfriends, some people are like, I've had 8 ex-girlfriends. I'm like, I'm so good on that. So what would you say about relationships in your 20s?
Well, it certainly continues the exploration process of knowing, you're learning about relationships. And I'm not talking just the physical part. You're learning about what you like in a person.
Yeah.
What's important to you. You're still learning that about yourself. I think as we get more into the 20s, I became way more interested in someone who was going to want to do stuff rather than sit around and just party. I want to go out and do things like physical things and have fun, not go to bars and stuff. And I in my late teens and early 20s, I wouldn't have thought that way. So I think relationships you begin to understand that the idea that, hey, I was dating a chick in high school or whatever, and I liked her, she liked me, and all this kind of stuff, and that's when you do your first kiss or whatever, that kind of stuff. But when you're in your 20s, now you're really coming into your own a little bit, and you're understanding more about yourself and what's important to you. Now, the key to that, the advice I would give is make sure then that you're setting standards. That's why we came up with this podcast on what you would want from someone and what they would want from you. And I don't think a lot of people do that in their 20s.
No.
Yeah, because they're afraid that almost seems, even me saying that, you're probably like, well, who does he think he is? What I'm saying is I knew, like, I was driven. I knew I was going to be successful.
Super young in your 20s?
Oh, yeah.
See, not a lot of people are like that, though.
That's why I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying that about myself. Now, someone else in their 20s, I happen to know someone just recently that I got to know through someone else. In their 20s, they traveled the world. That's what they wanted to do. They they decided not to go to college and just go travel.
So what would you say about relationships then?
But that's why I'm saying, if I'm going to go travel the world, then what would I want in a person? Someone who wants to travel the world, right?
Or you just be on your own.
Well,
and
but
find
what we're
your own
talking
journey.
about relationships is my point. So if I'm driven and I want to be successful, I want to make money, I want to buy a house, I want to get married, I want to have children, I think you start knowing that in your 20s. And we're not talking just 20, we're talking 20 to 29. So I think in during that time, that period of that 10-year period, that's when you really should start to understand. You've probably had some dating experiences, like little things too. I think about, it's funny. I'm kind of a neat freak, right? And I can tell you that I was around people who weren't, and it bothered me.
Yeah.
Now, you might easily just blow that off in the beginning, not think it's a big deal. But as you get a little older in your 20s.
You're right. I knew even in my teens when I had people around me that were messy, I couldn't
Yeah.
deal.
And so, I mean, I know it sounds silly, but maybe you're laughing out there and
But relationship-wise, what would you advise in the dating? Well, obviously you're assessing how to date, but would you say to be single? Would you say to date in a relationship?
No,
would you say people need to date around?
I think as you know what's important to you, you look to date people who have similar interests and ideas.
Well,
and
what
thoughts.
if you're like, when I was 21, because I'm just thinking as you're talking, I knew I wanted to be married one day. I didn't know when. I knew I'd want to have a kid. I didn't know when. And I knew I didn't want someone that was a complete slob.
Right there. So, but if you're going to date somebody, would you ask them if they want to have kids one day?
And I would say I have. So when I was dating people even older.
You're making my point.
Well, okay. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. But do you know how many people are going to be like, yeah, one day?
Well, I think there's people in their 20s that say, I don't want kids.
They do. But it's a lot. I don't,
Again, here's the point.
Common.
The point is, you dated in high school. It was probably puppy love, whatever, you're talking about your dreams, and then you're off to college and so on and so forth. Now, life's getting real. You're going to graduate from college. You're going to start in the workforce or your trade school or whatever it is. Now you start thinking about the next phases of life.
So
marriage.
If I'm in love and I'm 23, would you tell me to get married?
Boy, I like you said to me once, which was a lot of wisdom. I mean, I can't tell you. If you told me, Dad, I'm in love with this man, and I met the guy, obviously, and I felt he was a good guy, I'd be sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So you don't think...
But if the guy was, if he was still, not sure what he's going to do with his life, working part-time, and just kind of living in the basement of his parents' house and just whatever.
What about my situation when I was like 22? And I was like, hey, I'm going to get married to this person.
Again, there's a lot of factors there. And there are people who, and have for decades and decades, have gotten married in 19, 20, 21, and they built a life together.
Yep.
So I think if how I would respond to that question would be, and this goes for your brothers too, so this isn't just you. Is there, are the core fundamental pieces there that between you and this individual, you're going to be able to, take on this task of life together? And what I mean by that is, working hard, focused, discipline, all those things. Yeah, then I'd be all for. I'd be for it at 19 or 20. But it takes a really, like I said, that person would have to be, if I was giving my opinion, and you brought some kid over here when you were 18 or 19, and this kid still had boogers in his nose, and he had no idea what he was going to do. He just wanted to go skateboard around the world. I'd be like, no.
Yeah. Now, what if I was a single person and I was traveling, but also working on my job, but not sure if I had time for a relationship or dating? Would you advise me to not date? Would you advise me to still date and get to know the world? What would you say?
I think that has to do with, again, what are your goals? Like,
what if I said I'm down for, I'm just not, the time is hard. Should I just experience physical situations?
I'm never a proponent of that, because that doesn't create, if nothing else.
Yeah, why not?
Well, it's just, it's more of a physical thing, and you could say that could actually harden your heart, because if you're doing,
interesting,
if you're using, two people using each other and they say, oh, we agree to it. So that's true. But what you'll find, and what you have found, love is more than just that. It's, it's the mental, probably in a greater sense. It's the emotional connection you have with a person versus the physical intimacy, although that's extremely important. Yeah. So back to the relationship. So I just think if you're going through the course of from 18 to say 22, so in your 20s, you're getting your education, you're going to college, you're getting a trades, whatever you're doing, you're creating your future in your job and so forth. The relationship that you might find yourself in has to do with a person who also is moving in a similar direction. If you're the type of person where you say at 22 as a man, hey, I'd love to get married and have kids right away. Well, you better be talking to women who are interested in having children right away. A lot of women at 22 are not. They're ready to, go out and have fun or do their job or whatever. And I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I'm just saying you should know in the 20s more about what you want out of life. Not saying it's written in stone. It's your
selfish years.
Well, it's a good sense about, like, I found myself in my later 20s, like, I didn't want to party at all. All I wanted to do was get physically fit and do things physically and race and do all kinds of stuff.
What age did that kick in?
26, 27.
Okay.
Actually, 23 is when I got into lifting, and then really got into that. And then I started eating better. You know that whole story. We've already talked about that. And so I just became, I'll say obsessed, but man, I was like not drinking. All I wanted to do was see how fit I could get.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it was good that your mother was also in the same mindset.
Yeah.
Because we did it together. We literally took 2 years and 3 years and just hit it hard with the physical fitness. It was great. And every weekend we were doing something, really active and just having a good time. And now I'll contradict myself a little bit here. I can't say that I fully knew that about your mother. I didn't know if I even knew that about myself. So I will give some grace here to all of you out there and say, and we'll talk about the next decade as it relates to all these things. Allow yourself to change your mind. I'm not going to sit here and say this is
in your 20s for sure.
Yeah, this isn't any absolute stuff, because you may find you can't be changing all the time, because that could get a little bit annoying.
Maybe in your teens though.
Yeah, so I mean, if you find yourself in your 20s, like I changed quite a bit in my 20s. So let's go on to the next bucket.
Finances.
Yeah, so I'll start and then pass it over to you.
Okay.
I think this is where you're starting to establish yourself in a career, or in your on how you're managing and saving and spending your money. And many times what I've tried to instill in my kids is the idea of investing and saving. And I've done an okay job with that. I think there's still opportunities there. And my mom was always, more of a like save your money. But I didn't get a lot of coaching on investing. I would definitely, even if my parents aren't up for the task, I would, even if my job isn't anything to do with finance, I would take a finance class. I would take go online and read up about investing. Understand how the world works as it relates to money, investing, and so forth.
That's a good one.
Find
in
a
your 20s.
mentor.
I wish I did that in my early 20s.
I wish I'd have been better at it with you guys too. And it's one of those things where I think everyone needs, I actually think they should teach that in high school.
I know, it's such a shame. I think you have a great point. I love what you said. If I could go back, I would have taken a class. And, I'm dating somebody now, and him and I talk a lot. He was like, I was broke till I was literally 27, and 26 is when he got his PhD, or 27 is when he was like 26, 27. And he was like, you know what? I didn't have any money. I didn't even know how to invest it. But I think if it's taught, or if you can teach yourself or really start to do some research on it in your early 20s, it's in the back of your mind. And even though you may be broke, the second you do start making money, you're going to look at money in a way where, okay, I need to save this percentage for taxes if you're self-employed or a 1099 like I am. Or you're going to be like, I need to save this much. It'll be in the back of your head. When you don't have that there in the back of your head, you view money so different. Money, you just have a different relationship. And since I have become more educated in saving and investing, I'm still not the best. I need to get better. But my relationship with money has changed.
Yes.
When I wasn't educated.
But part of why it's changed is because you learned some of it the hard way.
Not in my late, when I was making like a lot of money in my mid 20s, I was saving. I didn't blow it. Like, I could have bought a lot more stuff, that's for sure. And I did blow some of it for sure. But I think when it started to decline, and I had that moment with money, and I was like, I'm going to do some more research on how I can maintain my lifestyle. And, I think I didn't go completely broke after making money. It didn't take that, but I definitely had to like dial back. And I'm like, oh, since I have to dial back and budget, which I had never had to do, it taught me more. So I think if you can learn about budgeting and you can learn about saving and investing, that will be in the back of your mind. Even if you feel like, like so many people I talk to about investing, even in their later 20s, and they're like, Genelle, I don't really have money to do that. Like, how lucky. But if you are educated on it, it'll be in the back of your mind. So, and it'll set you up for the mindset that you will have money. I think too, if you're constantly thinking that money is just something that'll escape you and you're forever going to be broke or poor or whatever it is you're in, that's not a good mindset to have about money. So start there. And then let's pivot into the next.
Just one last thing about money. I think someone needs to be able to paint the picture to you, being that I'm older now. And when I was thinking when I was making money in my 20s, I didn't think about what my life would be in my 60s. And I know that even sounds weird to say that.
That's interesting.
But what I've impressed upon Genelle and her brothers is the compounding of money when you have time on your side. Mm-hmm. And even if you're putting $100 a month away right now,
yeah, 50
$100
or 50,
and you're putting it into just a simple index fund, something that you can just forget about and not touch. Just had this discussion with one of your brothers, and you can just be so disciplined and not touch that.
There's an app called Acorns, and it auto takes $50 out of my account every 2 weeks. You can do it every day, every 5th day, every 10 days, every 2 weeks, every month. And you can pick any amount up to, I think, $500. So I have a random little Acorns account, and I don't even think about it. I just see it in my checking account, and it just pulls the money every 2 weeks. So I have a Robinhood, which I do my investing, but I have a whole nother little side account that I don't even really look at. That's my Acorns account. Okay, so getting into health, there are a couple of things I did in my 20s. Well, actually my entire life, that my parents kind of set me up for success. However, I will say you can reverse things. So in your 20s, there are a couple things I did based on fear, faith, and probably trauma, which this is where trauma was a benefit for me, that I did. The first thing with health that a lot of 20-year-olds do with their beautiful immune system, body, and skin is they drink a lot of alcohol in college and even in high school. I know a couple people that were like, yep, I got wasted every weekend in high school and every weekend in college. So that's a good, 6 to 8 years of just getting absolutely plastered in your very pivotal times of ending your growth period of your height. You just finished puberty. You're really in just this beautiful, fresh state, which is nice because all your organs are fresh. But I had drank alcohol when I was 21. I had my 21st birthday, and I'll never forget. I think I'd probably tasted alcohol before in high school, but I never ever felt what tipsy feels like. Nothing. I was so afraid of being out of control. And plus I would go to these parties and everyone would be throwing up, and I had a huge fear of throwing up. So I never drank in high school. I pretended like I did so I could go to parties, and people caught on and they called me a phony and they didn't invite me to places. So then when we got into college, I didn't really go away to school, but my friends did. I drank on my 21st birthday. I got really sick. And so after that, I didn't even feel what it was like to be drunk because I blacked out. I didn't even feel drunk. I went from being like somewhat sober and probably loopy to absolutely just, I woke up the next morning. I didn't drink at all through my 20s. I never had a glass of wine at dinner. I didn't drink beer. I didn't take shots, and I didn't make cocktail. Like we weren't really making cocktails. I think it helped a lot with my skin and just like, I think
your youthful look.
I would say if you're really vain, just kidding. If you're into beauty and you want to feel young and beautiful youthfully through your skin, if you're a lady, or if you're a guy and you care about that, that's awesome too. I would advise to cut alcohol or really just have it on special occasions. In your 20s are setting you up for how you're going to look and feel in your 30s and 40s.
Same with tanning. The whole tanning thing.
Yeah. And I would say I still like to lay out in the sun or go to a tanning bed once a month so I can maintain color. And actually, people have talked about how you can receive vitamin D and stuff like that. It's good for you to get a little sun. I mean, Terry has that UV light.
Yeah, but we won't get into it right now. But sunbeds are bad. Period. End of story.
Even one time?
They're not good.
Well,
they're the worst. They cause cancer.
Listen,
period. End of story.
Having
a sunbed, you're going to get
having
cancer.
a vodka drink also is straight poison. Let's just be frank there. There's no
All right,
benefit.
So you were saying about your health. What were you doing in your 20s?
Don't drink in your
drive.
20s. Well, don't drink and drive. Please don't. But don't drink at all. And if you do, maybe it's your once a month and you're having a good night with your friends, or you can have some red wine. But I will say, if you want to look good and you don't want to like look all wrinkled, stay out of the sun, eat mostly whole foods if you can. My lineup right now, I'm just going to give it real quick. Eggs, Parmesan cheese, whole milk or half and half, coffee, tea, sweet potato, rice, avocado, some greens, banana, dates, dark chocolate. That's where I'm at.
That's you didn't do that in your 20s, did you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
You know what I would say? Although I was trying to be
What about
vegan,
exercise?
I was trying to be vegan. I would eat all those fake meats. That would hurt my stomach.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Fried food, stay away from. That just will really just rip your stomach up.
So I think to just summarize this, because we're gonna
Well, then
but the 20s is a way to establish your health for the future, and you do that through analyzing what you're ingesting, what you're eating, and then also what is your physical activity. You didn't mention that, but
I was going to quickly get into it. Minimum all through your life, every decade, you should be walking like 30 minutes a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's walking and like low impact. Now, my dad does crazy intense workouts. I've read more for women to do these crazy impactful, very stressful workouts is stress on your body. And as a woman, it's not good for hormones. Oh. But that's a whole thing. I would say if you can, and you're like, I haven't worked out. I have a friend. I just asked her to do Pilates with me when she's in LA. She's like, Genelle, I haven't worked out in 6 months. I'm going to die. She's very skinny, great body, but she literally is like, I'm going to throw up in this class. I can't do it. You minimum walking 30 minutes a day. Okay, go. What would you say for health in your 20s?
I think
you were healthy.
You're establishing so hopefully you've gotten through, if you were the type of person that just lit it up in your late teens, early 20s, college and so forth. Again, I think what we're establishing here, your 20s really does set you up for your future, what you're going to look like, act like, be like. I think your 20s is really setting you up for the foundations of all the other decades. So when I think about health, eating is clearly a big one, because you can listen. There are plenty of nights me and my buddies ended up at Burger King or McDonald's at or Taco Bell at 2:00 in the morning. Totally garbage.
Taco Bell's a good stop.
Unhealthy, and so forth.
Love
so
Taco
thankfully, I got through that phase, and I get it. I understand. We all did it, and so forth.
Yeah.
But when I look at, if I were to just narrow it down, anything processed and sugar, if you can cut those out and get used to eating without those in your diet, fast food, of course, you're going to be a lot better off in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. Okay. And I agree with the alcohol. Physical fitness, I like the walking thing. It's simple, but find yourself. They have all these, like, I got asked to do this thing called a Tough Mudder recently, or Mud Tough, or whatever it is. Maybe you know what it is. But it's like these obstacle courses. You do it with a group of people.
Oh my gosh, you
run through mud. I got asked to do it. I'm not going to be able to make it. But the point is
it a race?
Yeah, it's fun. It's where you climb walls and do all kinds of stuff. So find something like a fun activity. I like canoeing. Of course, I'm a cyclist, so I really got into biking, and I found that to be enjoyable. I know there's a lot of people like to run. Tennis is another one. Now, pickleball is sweeping the nation.
Oh my gosh. Have you played?
I have not. I'm not interested.
You don't want to play?
No. But my point is do it, because what you will find, this is my advice, when you do get married, and if it happens to be in your 20s, by the time you're in your 30s, your kids, are of the age, when we get into these, you have a 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, they're active and having fun with your kids and being fit with your kids. And then as your kids get older and you're still fit, and then even older still, and they're still fit. And one day when you have grandkids, you want to be fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got to think that way.
Yeah.
Like I started thinking a long time ago,
yeah,
man, I want to be fit for you guys as you got older. And then I wanted to be fit for the day I have grandkids and so forth, because I want to be able to do stuff with my grandkids.
When did you start thinking about that?
I did in my 20s, actually.
Okay.
Later 20s.
You know what we should title this? How to Navigate Your 20s.
Yeah.
This is a good one.
Maybe. So, because I do think it's a cornerstone.
It is, because you're saying right now, because in your 30s, I'm thinking once you are married, hopefully you've set that.
Bingo.
Right?
Yes.
You've set that relationship. Hopefully you've kind of figured out friends.
Yep.
Hopefully you're not bickering
it's
online.
Lather, rinse, repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat.
And then you've maybe gotten your career,
Yes,
right? So
that's
I think
correct.
we could do a follow-up episode. Well, I know we should do a follow-up episode
Yes.
on navigating your 30s, but this is
or even the next decades. But you're exactly right. The establishing, so all this stuff will fluctuate. Your career can fluctuate, your physical fitness and all that.
Totally.
But if you can get some really good habits built
Keyword.
in your 20s around those things, your finances, like establish habits around, okay, I'm going to be disciplined to put X dollars away.
Yeah.
Then, maybe you get a better job. Maybe you can do more X. Maybe the company offers matching stocks and 401ks, whatever. All those things get established, and then it's on cruise control.
Yeah.
And then your physical fitness. Like when the kids were born, I remember I always liked to go to the gym. I wasn't like a gym type guy, but the time to go to the gym, work out, then come home. So, I did? I bought weight equipment. And when you guys were little, I put the weight equipment in my basement, and I'd go downstairs and lift, and you guys would play and your toys and stuff.
Oh.
So I still managed, because I had the habit of doing it in my 20s.
Yeah.
I didn't want to give it up, because it's very easy to say, oh, I'm too busy. I got kids now and all that. So I just put the equipment in the basement, and you guys would play down. That's where I had all your toys and stuff downstairs. Okay. And plus, you saw me doing it, and I always liked the fact you saw it. So you're right. The 20s, I would say, is foundational.
Yeah, this is how you navigate. And I would say then, since, this is just the decade that we're covering, I would say with friendships has been an interesting one. I've noticed people in their 30s I have a friend, Samantha, shout out to her. She's in her later 30s. sorry if I just said your age, but she's a great example of how she found her best friends, and it's been such a healthy, obviously everyone still has their drama.
In her 20s?
She weeded out some of the 20s,
Yeah.
and then now her 30s, she's got like her core girls. And there's always going to be some drama, right? Especially around us ladies. We have our moments. There's always going to be some miscommunication. Let's not say that we'll ever escape that. But I would say in your 20s with friendships, for me, something I've learned is I was really selfish in my early 20s, and I didn't want to hear it from anybody. Definitely, if you love a friend, hear them out. And if they're just talking nonsense and they make zero sense and they're not paying attention to your feelings as a friend, then that's not a friend, and move on. I think in my later 20s, I was doing that a lot. I was assessing a lot more quickly. And when you speak very clearly to your friends, like let's say you're in your early 20s and you're just like, hey, my cousin Sabrina, shout out to her. She just showed up. We're going to hang out. She's written a letter to a friend, talked clearly to a friend, and the friend couldn't navigate the communication and was just like, didn't say anything. And you know what? That friend drifted, and Sabrina is in a great place. You know what I mean? It wasn't a loss of someone who couldn't give you what you need as a friend. And in your 20s, you still need friends, and people change. So also, my last bit of the friendships, recognize that people are changing so drastically in their 20s. Maybe they were dating someone for 4 years. Think about like even 4 to 8 years of like your life in your 20s is a crazy amount of time to date someone. And some of us have did that. So like when I got out of my relationship, I quote changed a little bit because I went from being a codependent girlfriend who stayed at home and wore cute outfits and then made dinner and went to bed and never drank alcohol to all of a sudden being on my own. So recognize also too, when you have friendships in your 20s, that people are going to change and be a lot different, and don't take that personally, because that person is shaping their life. They're trying to find habits, or they're creating bad ones that you don't want to be a part of if you are trying to create those good habits. Anything to say about friendships before a little touch on spirituality?
What I would say is that there's a saying that you're a portion of the 5 people you hang around with the most. And so if I'm listening to this, I'm in my 20s right now, look at the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
And ask yourself, are they helping you move forward in your life, stay the same, or regress, go backwards? And if they're, doesn't mean they're bad people. I'm not. What I'm saying is that, but if you're ambitious and you are driven in goals, and I found that I switched to a lot of friends in my 20s because I changed. I wanted different things, pretty much in the areas we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I found myself, not because the interest faded, some of those folks were still doing the same thing. They're still partying and whatever. And I was driven. I was trying to buy a house and, get in shape and do all these things. And I found that people who weren't doing that, they were either offended, like, what's my deal, or whatever. So and the good news is I established some friendships that I still have today in that period. So I would say, really start to look around, if you're finding yourself, and listen, there's people out there that have the same friends for 40, 50 years, no doubt.
Yeah.
And they're out there, and that exists, and I admire that. But if you're finding, man, it's the same old with the same people, or you call them and they're like, man, I'm just like, the world sucks and everything sucks. And you get off the phone with them, you go, man, I'm like depressed, especially if you try to help them, but they stay the same. Mm-hmm. Maybe you need to take a look at, are you hanging around or around people who are building you up, who are helping you move forward in your life, and you're helping them also, by the way.
Yeah.
So that would be my... Beyond the marriages and the dating and all that, which we already talked about, I would say other relationships, be around people who are like positive, energetic.
Find mentors.
Yeah. Look for mentors, people who are going to like want to move forward and do some things and have fun and be excited. But everyone who wants to, let's go to the bar Friday and just drink, and if that's your thing, that's your thing.
Yeah, and every once in a while, it's fine. 20s is also to have fun too. Don't think that this is
lots of fun.
Yeah, it's so fun.
Every decade's fun.
Yeah,
Let's have
you're
fun.
right. Yeah, we're gonna have fun.
All right.
And then the last bit is spirituality. I think I really started praying when I was like 12. I found my little password journal, and it was like I was saying dear God in it, and I would write, and I felt spiritual then. But I think in my 20s, I in the early stages, like when I moved to LA, I was cracking open the Bible here and there. But I think start doing stuff that really, if you want to be in faith and grow that and be more self-aware in that, because that'll help really shape your life and the person that you'll become if you follow God. I've only gotten better when it comes to my grace with people, forgiving. I was definitely not a forgiving person in my early 20s when I was really just starting to tap into my faith. I think that's helped me. It's helped me be more forgiving, more open-minded, more graceful. I used to be a lot more just not very ladylike. I still have a lot of work on that. And I would say it helps me find hope when I'm really not in the best spot. There's been a lot of times in my 20s where I've felt so broken. And I think what gave me like the push was motivation to just do the best that I could. And that end of the day, I need to be the best, highest charactered version of myself. And I got that through God, because if I didn't have God in my life, to me personally, why would my character matter? Why would anything that grace or kindness to people, oh, we'll just be a good person? Well, for what? If I'm not living for God and for Jesus, like why would I, if I'm living for nothing, why would I have any sort of foundation at all?
Well, I think my piece would be just this. We always try to keep our conversations when Genelle and I have in buckets. You know, we talked about finances, we talked about relationships, we talked about physical, your health, and so on. And so spiritually, if you've not been exposed to any kind of spiritual thing, here's what you'll find. The one thing we didn't touch on was from your 20s up on for the rest of your life, it's a roller coaster ride. I mean, life goes up and down. It just does. And you'll experience probably some of that in your 20s, certainly in your 30s, 40s, and beyond. Yeah. And so when you have a constant in your life, like your spiritual connection, you know, Jesus Christ, it does help keep things in perspective.
It does.
So regardless if you lose your job or, you know, you break up in a relationship, your friend doesn't do this, or you have an argument or whatever it is, always having some spiritual, I'm going to call it, man, just your cornerstone for your life and the hope of eternal life is, to me,
you're right. It's always it's always constant.
It's helped me for sure. And I've certainly been, because I'm older, I've been through a little bit more than some, but there's people who've been through a lot more than I have. And I know for a fact that sitting here today, had I not had some spiritual life, I would not be, I'm not saying I wouldn't be here, but I probably wouldn't be as positive and have so many great things going on in my life because of that.
And an outlook on life.
So if you haven't, I guess in your 20s, if you weren't exposed through your family, which usually where it occurs, if you haven't, you know, maybe something to put into your, you know, this busy, packed 20s decade of doing so many great things, and you're really flourishing as a person in your career and all these things we talked about, potentially getting married, having children, getting promotions, all these things. Find some time, like we said, how important it is to stay physically fit and healthy. Find some time to add in their spiritual health as well. I promise you it will pay dividends beyond what you could ever imagine well into your next decades.
Absolutely agree. I actually started an Amazon. I have an Amazon storefront, but I started a list of all our podcast equipment that we used. And I'm even going to have my dad add some books, and we can add in like a Bible, a beginner Bible, something like that into it.
Nice.
So I will put that in the description so you have an Amazon list of Set the Standard.
Cool.
And even if not, you're not interested in books, you don't read nothing, but you want to maybe start a podcast, you guys can check out the equipment that we purchased and we got for our setup. Our setup is actually so legitimate. I was looking at it earlier. I'm really proud of this setup. So anyways, you guys, I hope whether you're in your 20s, you're going into your 20s, or you've way surpassed your 20s, you can take away something you related to or something you can still apply, build habits now, that nothing is too late. We were just talking about maybe the core things that we started or didn't do in our 20s. We wish we did.
Yeah, there you go.
So thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us everywhere.
Yeah, where are we? We are on
Apple Podcast, Spotify. Oh my gosh.
the YouTuber, the Gram.
Yeah, we're on the gram. We're on TikTok.
We're on X a little
We're
bit.
on-
I'm
we're on-
not on there that much. I need to get
Yeah.
on the
So
X. But
thank
we
you
appreciate
guys.
you.
Yeah, thank
We
you. And we'll see
appreciate
you in
you.
the next episode.
Yes. Peace
Bye.
out.